If a question pops up, make sure I might not notice it. So. I will re-video it and then I'll put it online.
All right, good morning. I'm Ms. Barsness. I'm the Workability Developer Job Coach at Burroughs High School. We welcome you. Scott O'Neill is currently Executive Director of IWV Economic Development Corporation. Before he retired in 2016, he was Executive Director and Head of Research and Engineering at Naval Air Welfare Center Weapons Division here at China Lake. Scott.
Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. And for you seniors that just graduated, congratulations. So our goal here today is to help our local seniors that have graduated, understand the job situation and also understand what it means to enter the job market here. And to help you and become a resource for you, to help you figure out your way. Some of you will be going to college and some of you will be just entering the workforce. And so what our goal here is in partnership with Burroughs and the Workability Program and also Mesquite is to help you understand what opportunities are available local and then just to put in front of you some different people who have different taken different approaches to how they've entered their career and how they got started, whether it's being into a private business or going to work for another company or going to work for the government or whatever. But there's a lot of ways to get started. And so we're just trying to help you think about that and to show you some different examples and to let you meet some different people and hear their stories about how they got started. And what you're going to find is that everybody's story is a little bit different. And sometimes we all get walking down a path that leads to a little bit of a dead end, but you just kind of turn and you pivot and you keep going. And pretty soon you look back and there you are, you're in the midst of your career. So anyways, we're just trying to help you through that. So we've arranged these videos and we've arranged some different speakers to talk to you. And one thing we're trying to do here is make this fun and make it interactive. So if you do have questions, please just type your question in and get it into us and we'll answer it. And or if we can't answer it today for some reason, we will get back to you if we have your contact information. So please, as you registered, you put in your cell phone or your email address, and we'll use that to be able to get back to you. So anyways, so we're trying to make this fun. We're trying to put some different resources in front of you and let you know that there is help. As you start building your career, we'll help you with your resumes, or we'll help you with applications if you have questions about those. So just look at the Economic Development Corporation as a resource. You can find us online, and also look at Jenny and some of the resources you've got at your high school, whether it's Burroughs or Mesquite, so or one of the other high schools. But anyways, we're here to help you. So right now, I want to make sure that you understand that one of the reasons we started this is because there's huge opportunity right now in Ridgecrest. And the Congress, after the earthquakes a year ago, the Congress authorized almost $4 billion to rebuild China Lake. And the damage at China Lake was primarily to a lot of the old facilities that dated to World War II. A lot of the newer facilities that have been built since then survived fine, but there was a lot of damage. And right now there's about 18 construction projects planned. Right now they're going through the process of doing the design and to build the bids for those various projects. So today, our speaker, we've got one speaker for you, is Mike Firenze, who works for Webcor, and it's a company, it's a construction company that's interested, and they're bidding on some of the jobs at China Lake. And Mike's going to tell you his story about how he got started, but also he'll talk to you a little bit about how they're approaching, what they want to do, if they win some of these contracts, in Ridgecrest to help augment their workforce. So I'm looking forward to hearing his story. But right now it's estimated that there's going to be about 1,500 jobs created locally, and some of that labor will come from out of town, and some of it will be met by in town. But it's an opportunity for you as you begin to enter your career. So we're going we just want to make sure that you're aware of what's going on there, and that the kind of skills and the kind of jobs that are going to be available are huge, and they're very diverse. There's the construction trades like plumbing and electrical work and air conditioning and framing and just construction, but there's also administrative jobs. There are going to be jobs for helpers and for checkers, for people who are looking and doing inspection and helping that project go on. And these are going to be going on for the next 5 or 6 years. So right now, as you think about your next steps, we really want to make sure that you're aware of what's going on locally. The other speaker we've got today is Michelle Lemke. Michelle's a local kid. and Michelle is a Burroughs graduate, and she went to Cerro Coso, and she's got a degree from Bellevue University. And she works right now at our local regional hospital here in Ridgecrest. And so Michelle works in the health and human services area. So, she's got a little bit different perspective on a career and what it means to be able to work in some of the health and the human services areas. So we're going to let Michelle start, and then we'll end up with Mike Firenze, and Mike will talk to you a little bit about what's going on in the construction world. So over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, everybody. As Scott said, my name is Michelle Lemke, and I am local to Ridgecrest. I grew up here. I graduated from Burroughs High School exactly 25 years ago, a quarter of a century. Seems like a long time. So I did not follow a traditional path when it comes to going to school and starting your career. I jumped into work with both feet right after high school. I actually got my first job during high school. I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken. So don't knock fast food, because I worked for them for 2 years, and many, many lessons I learned working there that I took with me for the rest of my career. But after high school, I got my first job in healthcare, working for Drummond Medical Group, just as a fluke. I did not graduate from high school thinking I want to go into healthcare. Actually, both of my parents worked on base, and I rather assumed that that's what I would do, because that's what kids in Ridgecrest do. But working in healthcare changed my perspective, and I realized that I needed to go to school if I wanted to move forward in my career. So I graduated from Cerro Coso with my associate's degree. In 2003, I graduated from Bellevue University with a bachelor's in healthcare administration in 2005. And then I graduated again from Bellevue University with a master's in healthcare administration in 2008. So never stop learning. There's always something new that you can learn. I really enjoy working in healthcare, and my first job was doing billing. It wasn't super fancy or exciting, but I learned a lot about the healthcare industry by doing that. And it actually gave me a good foundation for moving up through my career. So one of my pieces of career advice is always be learning, always be looking for opportunities, and be willing to pivot. Starting out in a sort of finance area doing billing, and then pivoting over when I started working for the hospital in 2000 into quality management and risk management. Was very different than anything I'd ever done. And then growing in that role and pivoting again in 2010 to human resources to be able to grow further into my career. So always look for opportunities, and don't assume because you don't have the knowledge yet that you can't do that job. Do we have anybody to ask questions?
Any questions?
Anything?
Okay.
I can give a little bit of job seeking advice.
Yeah, good.
When you're out there looking for a job, as much as people would like to think that it shouldn't matter what you look like, the image you set when you present yourself for an interview is actually very, very important. It's not important to me whether you're wearing designer clothes. What's important to me is that you put in effort. So when you walk in to interview with me and it looks like you just kind of rolled out of bed and threw on a crumply shirt, that says to me that you didn't put out very much effort in this interview. It isn't important to you, and that will reflect, when it comes down to splitting hairs over who I want to hire, I will take that into consideration, and I have. One of the first interviews I ever did back when I worked at a physician's private practice, somebody came in who was actually an LVN interviewing for a nursing position, but she walked into the room in torn jeans, a t-shirt, and chomping gum with an open mouth. And I already decided within 2 minutes that she was not going to get the job. So presentation is everything, no matter what you're interviewing for, even if you're going to be the floor sweeper at Stater Brothers, put in the effort and let them know that that job was important to you.
Yeah, and I would just Mike here chiming in. I would agree with that, and you know, it also is a sign of respect. You know, that they respect themselves and what they're coming there to do, and respect is key in any relationship.
That's absolutely right. So Michelle, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So as you moved into your career and after you got started, I'm sure you took, a number of different jobs in the healthcare industry, but what did you learn about yourself from your different jobs? And
what I really learned, as I shifted from position to position, is that I was capable of more than what I thought. So your ability to learn and adapt, I think, is much greater than you would believe it to be. And even making the jump to my first job at the hospital, I was working in a private physician practice at the time, and I almost didn't apply for it because I looked at the job requirements and thought, I am not qualified for that job. I had not yet attained a degree. I had just started taking one class at Saracoso, and they were, the responsibilities were very, very different than what I did. But I had somebody convince me that I was capable and I should at least apply. And I did, and I interviewed, and I was completely floored when I got the job. But I took that as an opportunity to prove that I was worthy of it, to prove that I could do it. So I guess that's the other piece, is don't assume because you get the job that you can just kick it into neutral and coast through. If you really want to make a career of it and you really want to move forward, then you have to embrace that job and really put everything that you have into it. Even if you're working at the front desk, answering the phone, be the best answer the phone person in the building. Really go for it with gusto, and that's how you're going to advance.
so I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that it's really important, and I agree that it's really important to continue to learn throughout your career. How do you do that? Do you continue to take classes, or do you just read, or how do you personally try to stay attuned to what's going on in your particular area?
It's a combination of things. I belong to what we refer to as listservs. So it's sort of like, an email club of people in similar facilities. I have an HR one, I have a risk management one. So we share knowledge amongst each other. We'll send out a question to the group because maybe there's a smarter person in the group that has been there and done that, and then I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I learn a lot from those people. I do take courses, not sort of, go to school kind of courses, but professional development. Communication is actually one of my favorite geek out subjects. So I have taken innumerable communication courses. I'm a trained crucial conversations trainer. But I still will read books and take courses because there's always more nuances to understand about communication.
So do you have some people working directly for you?
I do.
Supervise?
I have 3 managers who report directly to me, with one additional, what we call a matrix reporting, which you see a lot of in healthcare. Part of what he does pertains to risk management. So in those things, he reports to me, but also he's responsible for quality. So he reports to the quality administrator for those things.
And so what do you do when one of your employees makes a mistake? What do you expect?
My expectation, we all do. I do.
Yeah.
I've been working at the hospital for 20 years. I've been in my current job for 10 years, and I still make mistakes. So I'll start with what I do when I make a mistake. First thing I do is talk to my boss. Jim Suver, CEO of the hospital, I go to him and I tell him, here's the circumstance. This is what happened. This is what I did. This is how I think we can fix it. And that's one thing I tell the people who report to me. If you're bringing me a problem, bring me possible solutions. Don't drop it in my lap and expect me to fix it for you. You know, at a management level, I would expect them to be able to do that, but I encourage them to do that with their employees. Push them to think and to problem solve. You know, that helps them grow. But that is what I expect in my direct reports. I know they're going to make mistakes. I don't want them to try and hide it or cover it up. I want them to come to me and tell me about it, and we can fix it together. But the flip side of that is you have to be open and receptive to them when they come to you. You know, don't get angry and don't admonish them. You know, and I'm not saying there's never times where you don't have to discipline people if they continuously make the same mistake. Make a mistake, learn from it, don't do it again. But definitely be transparent.
I would agree, because I think young people these days, they don't own up to their mistakes.
Yes.
They just, you know.
And that is a life lesson, but also a career lesson. You know, be willing to take the credit when you do something well, and be willing to take responsibility when it doesn't work in your favor. You have to be willing to do both. You can't have just one way.
Yeah, and some of the prior sessions we've had, I shared some advice my dad gave me when I was pretty young. And he said, basically, when you do bad, speak up, you know, and he said, when you do good, shut up. He said, because people, he said, people will make more, if you do something, make a mistake, he said, and you speak up, some people will make more excuses for you on what you could do to fix it or, you know, improve the situation than you'll ever make for yourself.
Yes.
And then when you do good and you don't say anything, people will give you more accolades than you could ever get for yourself. And so I've used that advice over the years, and I think he's pretty right.
I would agree with that. And I have lots of book recommendations, but one of my favorite books of all time is called The Speed of Trust. And it was written by Stephen M.R. Covey. So if you've heard of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it is his son, Stephen M.R. Covey, that wrote that book. But the basis of the book is you earn trust like you put savings in a bank account. And when you break trust, you spend exponentially more than you earn. So as long as you maintain that trust and you build it, that goes toward your reputation as a professional. So I can, you know, tell you from real life experience, there are times when there will be people that you work with that you're not friends with, but you have to work with them. And I have had people, you know, jump at every opportunity to sort of kick sand in my eye. You know, oh, look, Michelle made this mistake. Oh, look what her department did wrong. But because I have always outed myself before anybody else outs me, it doesn't work. It's, oh yeah, I know about that, and she's fixing it. So, you know, you do yourself more good by being honest about your mistakes than anybody could do damage by pointing it out.
That's good advice. So as a supervisor, though, do you try to mentor your employees, and or do you have a mentor yourself?
I do have a mentor. In my case, my mentor happens to be my boss. And I've had different mentors over my career. But I do try, you know, when they seem receptive, I try to be a mentor to them, and I try to guide them on their professional development. And there's a couple that I encourage constantly to go back to school. You know, they started but never finished, and it's never too late.
Right.
So fun fact, I did graduate from Saracoso, but you probably, if you did the math, noticed that there was a big gap between when I graduated from high school and when I graduated from Saracoso. It took me 6 years to get my associate's degree, because in the beginning I took one class, and then I took 2 classes. And then, you know, I think I had one semester where I did a full load, which was challenging because I was working full time. Yeah. But the point is, every class you finish is a class you don't have to take again. And that was how I got myself through school. Every class I finish, I don't have to repeat it, and I'm one step closer to having a degree.
That's right, it's a long journey. So I have one last question, and we'll get Mike going here. But so we all have strengths and weaknesses. How did you identify your own weaknesses and your strengths, and then what do you do to try to balance them out?
I think identifying your weaknesses, at least for me, came with maturity over time. I think in the beginning of my career, it was difficult for me to see my weakness. You know, you're young and you're invincible and you think you're brilliant. And I was a very fast learner. That was my strength. And I'm pretty soft-spoken, much more so back then. And so looking back, I would have to say that was my weakness. I was very timid and very insecure. And even if I had the knowledge, I wouldn't share it unless I was absolutely positive that I was right. So I still do that sometimes. So that weakness is still there. I like to be right, and I don't like to say things that are incorrect. So sometimes I verify first. But it is important because I took my weakness in communication and I turned it into a strength. I had that on my evaluation 15 years ago, that I should take a communication class and improve on that. And I took that and ran with it. And people who know me now don't believe me when I tell them that I was shy and timid and insecure and I had a problem communicating. So sometimes you can take a weakness and you can make it your strength.
Very good. Okay, Mike, we'll let you tell your story and we'll have some questions for you too.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for sharing your story. That was, that's going to be a tough act to follow. So you just gave me a bunch of advice that I just wrote down myself. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so.
I'll learn, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, a little bit about my background. You know, I work for a general contractor in California, a large general contractor, who has a federal presence and is growing a federal presence in the Navy and military military infrastructure space. And how I got to this place was out of college. So I kind of, you know, just like a lot of people that are going to be on these calls, you know, I came right out of high school and I went to work the next day. Literally, I graduated on a Thursday and I was working in the field for a general contractor on Camp Pendleton the next Monday. You know, I've always done internships growing up in the construction industry, and my parents and family worked in the industry here in San Diego. And so I went right out into the field as an assistant PM, really a project engineer, and started, you know, digging holes and pumping water out of holes. That's my favorite. I had a raft with a pump in the middle of a retention pond that I had to pump out, and started kind of at the boots level, and then worked my way up to project manager. Went to college when I graduated from college with economics. Really went into the construction industry, focused on management, and focused on the project management side of things. So as I grew in project management, got some master's degrees from USD, University of San Diego, in land development, and then a master's degree in systems engineering from University of California, San Diego. And started doing some work in more on the system side of defense contracting rather than vertical construction, and got a kind of an education with the Marine Corps in distributed power, and started my own technology company to kind of help out that cause, and did the startup life for 2-3 years, which is a brutal life, and then came back to the vertical construction side, and now where I run a program for Webcor, looking at vertical construction as well as critical infrastructure, things like microgrids and big renewable power plants. So it's been a very diverse road to get here. You know, I would agree. I too, my first job was at McDonald's. So I worked at McDonald's for, I think, a year. So don't knock fast food. And I would agree too, you know, the journey to get here, looking back, really has been one that is about adapting, and working hard at every stage. You know, just because you get there, like Michelle said, just because you get there, that doesn't mean you stop. Like, you're literally looking to get to the next place, and you have to keep your eyes moving forward, not to get stuck and not to be stagnant. And that's both from a career standpoint, but also from an education standpoint. You know, going out there, putting yourself out there, trying for those programs, certificate programs, and really showing that you have what it takes to persevere. Because I think as you move up into management and you try to strive for those next positions, perseverance really is a key quality that it takes to get to those places. so it's been a long road, and our firm is looking at doing a lot of the work in China Lake, and our kind of take on it is that we want to be somebody who leaves the community in a better place when we leave China Lake. So we know it's 3 to 5 years. We're not going to put Webcor headquarters in Ridgecrest, or at least it's not in the plans yet. But we want to come in and help out and do our part because we know that that's what's needed. But we also want to leave the community in a better place and help localize, hire, train local, and again, leave it better for the future.
So, Mike, a couple questions for you. You made a comment that you started your own company.
Yeah, yep, I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you made that decision and what your company was about and what happened?
Yeah, so the company was a microgrid technology software and integration firm. So we developed software and controls platforms that integrated different renewable resources, batteries, generators, and then created on-site power systems to remove critical and essential facilities and loads. And so the software of all of that is kind of where the magic's at. And it wasn't available at the time when we were kicking off this program. So, we did what any good entrepreneurial spirit would do and said, well, let's just start our own company. And made pretty much every mistake possible along the way. I think when you do a startup your first time, it's impossible to do anything right. But we were successful. We built some projects, we developed the software, and eventually we sold the company to a public firm, kind of at the right time when everybody was, over the challenge and ready to move on and hand it off to somebody who could manage it. So it was a wild ride, but again, what Michelle said is the courage, the courage to kind of just go, I can do this. Why can't I do this? And that's really the way that I looked at it, is why can't I do this? Right.
So what did you learn about yourself when you went through that experience?
Yeah, the human spirit can take a lot of beating.
It's resilient too, right?
Yeah, but again, that courage, in the end of the day, I'm happy. I don't regret a single thing. And every single piece of it is what has got me to where I am at today. And I'm thankful.
So you mentioned that your family was in construction, and so you kind of grew up around that whole industry. How did you figure out that's what you really wanted to do? I mean, you started your own company, you went off in a different direction, you did some engineering, but then, here you are back working for a major construction firm that's doing work worldwide.
Yeah. I think just my perspective on it all is it's just what I'm good at. It's what's natural to me. And probably because I grew up around it, I just understand the way that those things work. But also too, for me, just in general, I'm kind of a tinkerer and a builder. So that's what I just like to do. So it's just, I think I educated myself in the other stuff, like the economics and those things. That's kind of where the hard work was done, to be honest with you. The building is just kind of a natural thing. And again, growing up around it, a lot of influence.
So your company has, you're in the process of doing some bidding and, competing for some of the work on the base. What generally can you offer about, looking at, bringing people in to do work if you're successful in winning some of those jobs, or hiring locally? Could you talk a little bit about that? What skills might be things that you look at?
Yeah, so our program, in its full extent, of course, there's varying degrees depending on how much work we actually get out there. Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Sorry about that. But our program, depending on the level of work we actually are able to achieve, we will have a general manager who comes out there who's kind of like a construction manager. We're looking for someone who's going to be really a good mentor to folks that we would hire and train locally. And so have a general manager come out who then would have some kind of, well, I call them the gray hairs, who got a lot of experience, say, in superintending, a lot of experience in project management. And then from there, you know, we would first look to hire locally. You know, start with folks that could be good guides and mentors and know what to look for, know what to watch out for, and then bring in local talent and see what's around. You know, that's going to be the first way avenue that we go, is to kind of try to grab the local talent, folks who know the area. You know, they have connections in every one of the different areas that we're looking for, and they just generally know their way around Ridgecrest. And then from there, we're going to rely a lot on our subcontractors to kind of do the same. And then any of the gaps that we need filled, we'll hire first local, and then we'll bring in folks to help out, similar like to how we did.
Very good. That's insightful. So as you go forward and you look at your own career, talk a little bit about what your goals are. Your personal
Yeah, that's kind of a cool question. Thanks, Scott. You know, the focus of our federal practice at Webcor is vertical construction and critical infrastructure. And me personally, if I look around, you know, I'm 37 years old, have this program we're trying to build, and looking around and asking myself, where can we do the most good? You know, where are the greatest challenges? And really my goal is to have practices in both of those areas that are substantial, but also then to find a niche in the area where they merge. So where the built environment merges with critical infrastructure and resilient infrastructure that's sustainable. You know, it's kind of my goal to help try to lead that, help both the military. We do a lot with the tribes, so local tribes, and then local communities, and, you know, give back. If we're going to build something, let's build something that's good for everybody, and let's give back and have fun doing it. That's my goal. That's where I want to be. That's where we want to be. And those will be happy days.
Very good. Okay, I have a couple of questions for both you and Michelle. So what piece of advice, now that you know you're into your career, you've had people working for you, you went through, you know, your own experience, you know, entering the job market. So what key pieces of advice might you offer, you know, a brand new high school graduate who is getting ready to, you know, move into a new phase of their life, whether it's going to college or going into the job market? You know, what piece of advice would you just offer in general? How did you go,
Michelle?
Yeah.
Me first?
Mhm.
So, given a lot of thought to that, and I think one of the challenges I see in our young employees, going back to communication, is that tendency to take offense or to take things personally and become emotional about things that have to do with work. And I want you to bring your passion and your feeling to work, so don't misinterpret that. But what I want people to remember, and especially the young students, even if you're going to college, is you're not going to get along with everybody. People are going to come at you in a negative way. Usually it means that they are insecure. And you can't control what they say or what they do, but you absolutely 100% can control how you respond to that. So if you respond in kind and you perpetuate the situation, you know, then that's what you're going to be left with. But if you can control your own emotion for that moment, you know, and come at it in a more mature, professional way, it will serve you better in the long run. It's a skill that takes many years to learn, I think. But the sooner you start considering that option, the option of not getting angry or the option of not getting offended, and maybe asking them why, instead of mirroring it back to them, you know, the farther you're going to get and the less emotional baggage you'll have.
Yeah. How about you, Mike?
Yeah. And I would second that. The way that you manage conflict is key, because you're always in conflict, even when you don't realize that you're in conflict. And then on top of that, and that goes parallel with that, I would say self-awareness. You know, be aware of the impact that you have on the environments that you're in. be aware of the words that you say and how they may hit somebody. Even if you don't mean to be offensive, or you mean to communicate something and you think that you communicated something well, that might not be the case. So self-awareness, that makes for a happy work environment for yourself, and like Michelle was saying, for everybody else. So I would, that self-awareness, I think a lot of new job applicants could try to practice that right out of the chute a little more.
Very good. So one message I've heard from both of you is, you both have kind of went into different jobs not feeling like you were on top of it, that you had, you were at risk. And so you're venturing into the unknown to a certain degree. What did you find as a personal attribute that kind of helped you the most, kind of get through that? I think I've heard some of the answers already, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about, that, but also mention or think about and talk about what it meant to be flexible, to kind of roll with some of the punches.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, I'll let you go first this time.
Yeah. I think the one thing that pops out in my mind, which I spoke about before, is perseverance. To really kind of excel, even, like I said, I started at McDonald's, but getting from McDonald's, moving to Oscars, batting Oscars, big step up. But, just to get there, had to set my eyes on what I was going to do, so decide what it is that I wanted to do. So that's key. What am I trying to accomplish? And then fight through it. Every journey has its obstacles. And even the smallest ones are, in the end of the day, if you give up and you go home, then, you didn't reach what you were trying to do. And you can never get to that next step. And that next step of always growing. So perseverance to me is, I think, a key value. And then really going on what you're saying, Scott, exactly. And this is where I think the art is being flexible. So having a goal in mind, but you don't exactly know how you're going to get there. The program I'm working on, we were handed an impossible task by the state of California and by the United States Navy. And it was one of those ones where it's like they picked you up and dropped you off in the middle of nowhere and said, find your way home. But you know what? The goal, having the vision, and then just being determined and flexible, you can always find your way around an obstacle. There's really no error that you can't, correct. So you're right, Scott, flexibility, and then just driving on, getting up every morning and persevering.
Very good, Michelle.
Yep, I absolutely agree with that. And going back to that flexibility, you have to have that willingness to allow people to challenge what you think is the right way to do things. Because it may be a right way, but it's not necessarily the only way or the best way. And, when Mike said that there's always some conflict there, I absolutely agree with that, going back to his previous answer. But in addition to that, not all conflict is bad. Conflict, drives discussion, when it's handled correctly. You drive discussion, you have that dialogue and that sharing of ideas. And, maybe what I thought was the best way to do it and what Mike thought the best way was to do it, once we discussed it, we discovered there's a third option that really is the best way to do it. But I didn't have his information and he didn't have my information. And when we put them together, we were able to move forward much farther than we thought was possible. So, don't underestimate a team dynamic, and try to be the Lone Ranger all the time.
I think
well said.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and what you both are kind of alluding to a little bit is, we all bring our own personal perspectives and we all have our own strengths and our weaknesses, but being part of a team, as part of the team, trying to figure out your team members and what their strengths and weaknesses are. So as a group, you can really balance out, through the diversity of each individual, to be able to bring better value, whether it's value in solving a problem or value to your company or whatever. But people can't act and operate as islands, then, you know, there's this kind of a prescription for failure. But, you know, understanding, even as a brand new employee, you're still part of the team, you know, and you can still add and make contributions, and you can also just learn, you know, but still being part of the team and knowing that you're bringing an element that you know, to that team that's going to help it become a more effective and functional group.
And if I could just piggyback on that a little bit, you know, when you have an organization like the hospital, it takes every department, every position, you know, they're there for a reason. In order for us to be successful, we need all of the cogs to turn together. And so sometimes a pitfall I see with some of our newer, younger employees, they learn the job, you know, say they work in patient registration and they get really good at it and they come up with ideas, which is great. But they forget that that is one cog. That department is one piece of the hospital, and changing the way that we do something seems like a good idea to them, but maybe they're not taking into consideration the ripple effect of that change. So it's, you know, helping them to understand, you know, I want you to have ideas, but just because we don't use it doesn't mean we don't value it. There are other factors that you don't have access to that are the reason.
You have a follow-on comment, Mike?
No, I think that's spot on.
Now, I just want to make a comment about that because I think it's, you know, this is a really important topic, and that I know when I was on the base and, you know, leading the research and development group, I'd have a lot of brand new employees, you know, employees that have been with the base for, you know, 2 or 3 years, and they were, you know, very energetic and, you know, sometimes pretty innovative, and they would come forward with ideas. And what I always tried to do was never to judge the idea. You know, and I would ask questions like, okay, that's a good idea. So what do you need to do? You know, what experiment do you need to run, or what thing do you need to do, you know, to test your idea, to see, you know, to try to understand the value of your idea. And a lot of times, you know, they would need to, you know, run an experiment. They might need a couple $1,000s, or maybe they just needed some time to go think about it a little bit, you know, further and to do some research. And then make them come back, you know, with that, you know, whether it's an experiment, if they needed money or they needed something, you know, and to talk about it again. And then, you know, if it got to that point, you know, to give them some latitude to go do something about that idea. 9 times out of 10, they would come back and say, well, it didn't work out. But that's okay. What I didn't want to do as a leader was to tell them that's a stupid idea, or that's you know, or no. I would much rather, you know, that they come to those kind of conclusions, because I mean, even a baseball player, if you hit 1 out of 3, you're doing really good, you know. And so yeah, we're all gonna you know, struggle with some of our own ideas, whether or not how practical they might be. But the last thing you want to do is curb, you know, is that spirit of innovation, and really the ability to think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where, I mean, that innovation is what drives business forward. You know, doing business is doing business. You know, what the adapting and changing and being innovative and having a culture that allows for that. You know, that's I think what makes very successful businesses.
Yeah. Okay, one last question for you each. Maybe I might have one after this, but we'll see. You both have kind of worked for bosses, and you've kind of worked for yourself. Which way do you like it? And what you know, where did you find strength being your own boss versus working for somebody? And maybe what were some of the downsides of being your own boss?
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle. I'll follow you.
I don't know that I was ever fully my own boss per se, but I certainly have a lot of latitude in my current position, you know, to make decisions without having to check with my boss. So there are parts of that are very scary. You know, when I think about the scope of my responsibility, even though, you know, as far as people who report up to me, you know, report to my managers, and those managers report to me, is a small portion of the hospital, but, you know, my position over the HR function, you know, makes me responsible for the well-being of all 900 of our employees. So every time a manager comes to me with an issue that they have with an employee, I always look at it with a skeptical eye, because I need to make sure that we're being fair to the employee, that they've been given, you know, opportunities to make improvement. Have we been clear with them what they are or are not doing that doesn't meet expectation? So there are days when, you know, that responsibility weighs heavy. And sometimes in the evening when I'm at home and my husband asks what I want to watch or what I want for dinner, I just say, I don't want to make a decision. I've made too many decisions today and I don't want to make any more. So even something that simple, just please do something. You know, but then on the flip side, you know, in times where I do lean on my boss and my supervisor, I find it very comforting. Not necessarily for him to give me the answer or to tell me what to do. And sometimes I'll say to him before I share my issue, you know, I just need to sound it out. I just need to bounce this off of somebody and talk it through. And sometimes he doesn't have to say anything at all. Just hearing the words out loud coming out of my mouth is sometimes enough. Thinking it in your head and saying it out loud, believe it or not, can have a different impact. You know, I can ask a question, and as soon as I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, I know what the answer to that question is. So there's times that it is very comforting to have that there to fall back on and not to be, you know, ultimately responsible for everything.
Right. Are you there? Can you hear us, Mike?
I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can. I think the Zoom life always catches you one way or another. Can you repeat the question, Scott, so I make sure I answer it? Because I was so deep in listening to Michelle.
So just about being your own boss, and you know, some of the strengths, pluses and minuses.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I was kind of daydreaming a little bit. I was thinking the benefit is that you get to choose what you're going to do. The downside is, and the scary part is that you have to choose what you're going to do. And you know, I think for me personally, and where I'm at in life, you know, I like having a boss. I like having structure. I like having a big organization behind me, and mentors. You know, I really look towards the people that I call my bosses as my friends and my mentors. So for me, where I'm at, that's what I prefer. But I would say, you know, being your own boss, especially if it's something where, you know, you got to kind of go off road a bit and put it in 4-wheel drive, and you're striving to achieve something, and you need flexibility. You know, that in that scenario, being your own boss, you know, I think was a good thing. I almost that it's necessary. So there's benefits both ways, you know, but for me, preferably, at least right now, security is a great thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation too, is that, you know, to a certain degree, the question, you know, being your own boss, there's a fallacy to it. I mean, we all report to somebody somewhere, sometime, whether it's a customer.
Or your wife.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, you know, but it's fun to think about it. And I do think there are some times when, you know, like you said, you know, when you get to call the shots kind of, and you get to set the strategy, or you get to set the approach. And, you know, so I think I agree with you. I think those are kind of fun times, but there are other times where I found a lot of comfort and a lot of satisfaction in just working as part of a team, you know, and co-equals with a lot of other people. So I do think though that, you know, a lot of people, you know, think they would like to go into business just so they can be their own boss. And, you know, they find there's a whole different set of problems. There are no free lunches, I guess. That's the bottom line. So what last piece of advice would you guys give to these young people who are getting ready to start into a different phase, whether they're going to college or whether they're you know, just going to go into the workforce? And just some parting shots.
For mine, I think I just want to touch for a minute on social media, which is a relatively new thing for me, talking about with employees, even though it's been around for a long time. You know, it has just grown exponentially over the last 5 years. And it has just ingrained as a part of life for young people now. And, you know, I'm old, so I know about Facebook and Instagram, and I know there are many more options than that people use. So the first thing I want to say is, you know, as an employer at the hospital, we don't snoop on people's social media, but there are employers that do. You know, it's a little bit of a legal gray area when it comes to that. But, you know, Scott talked about the fallacy of being your own boss. So, you know, the fallacy to me of, you know, freedom of speech is just because you're allowed to say it doesn't mean you should, and it doesn't mean there will be no repercussions. And I think we're seeing that play out right now in a lot of ways in the media. So just bear that in mind. I think that the issue with social media right now is there's this expectation that it's, you know, it's private and it's my own and I can say what I want, except a lot of their accounts are public. So it's really not private. You have no reasonable expectation for us to not be able to see it. And especially when it reflects upon the company, then we will have something to say about it. So I just, as you transition into the workforce, I just caution young people to really be thoughtful about how they use the weapon of social media, because I think it can be wielded as a weapon.
Good advice. Mike?
Yeah, it's really spot on. That's kind of that awareness, and then that's the new dimension of awareness, the social media awareness, the virtual awareness. You know, I think the advice that I would give is just that nothing is below you. You know, everybody starts somewhere, and so, you know, if the job options that you have in front of you are, you know, McDonald's, you know, Kentucky Fried Chicken, sweeping up as a janitorial, like that's just a place to start. You know, I think a lot of times folks think they need to start in the C-suite, and, you know, everybody in the C-suite starts in the janitorial closet. So I know plenty of people. Our CEO is the son of an immigrant, came over from Denmark, Holland, and was a steel worker. So, you know, that everybody starts somewhere. Nothing is too little of a place to start.
That's good advice too. Okay, well, I really do appreciate you, Mike, and Michelle, to share your stories this morning. And I do hope that some of the people out there, and, you know, they're listening to these stories will take you know, away some key nuggets for them, and how, you know, and how they want to and how their own looking, you know, their own personal way to get started in the next phase of their life. So, and again, you know, I think it's important to see that there's no prescriptive way to go forward, but the big thing is to get started. And I do want to reassure you know, a lot of you that there are resources, and you know, Jenny is a key resource because she's already been working with many of you, and also Jen Williams over at Mesquite. You know, I think that they're both you know, people who you can look to you know, help answer questions or get started. But Rebecca McCourt and myself at the Indian Valley Economic Development Corporation are also wanting to help you get started. So if you have questions, please, you can email us, or you can just email the EDC, and we'll try to get you some answers. But then there's also America Job Center here in Ridgecrest that can you know, be a value. So, you know, but the key thing is to keep up on what's going on locally. And so when companies like Webcor come into town, they'll be advertising for what their needs are. And, you know, we really do want to make sure that you're aware and that you're ready to respond. Thank you very much. Jen, any questions or any comments?
No. So the next one, our next seminar is to be determined. So if you would like to know when it will take place, leave it in in the comments, or you can email me. That's it. So thank you for joining.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Michelle, for your stories.
Thank you.